Love GAA history? Then you'll love going deeper with Over the Bar's Cordia Club membership. For just €5 a month, you'll get exclusive member-only episodes and series, early ad-free access to the main podcast, plus detailed show notes, a newsletter, and the chance to have your questions answered. Join Michael Foley and Ciaran O'Hara as they uncover the stories, the legends, and the questions that shaped our games. Don't just listen, be part of the club. Join now at overthebar.club.
Since the dawn of the GAA in 1884, the telling of its stories have been just as important as the sports. Through the years, heroes and matches have been immortalised, inspiring generation after generation. But some of its most important stories have also gotten lost or turned into legend. And in this series, we will explore some of the GAA's most fascinating forgotten tales, separating rumour from reality and myth from the truth that is often more amazing than the fiction. I'm Michael Foley.
And I'm Ciaran O'Hara.
So join us for Over the Bar, exploring the histories of the GAA.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Over the Bar, the Gaelic Games history podcast. We're still in World Cup zone. Mick, we're attaching ourselves to the tenuous links to the world game that the GAA has.
Yeah, and I mean, but to be fair, tenuous or not, if we didn't at least try and make a connection to Italia 90, I think we would be very much in dereliction of our duties. And there is a connection to Italia 90, and primarily it's how the GAA react to something that genuinely I don't think they ever thought they'd have to ever deal with.
So that's our question. How did the GAA react to Italia 90?
The short answer is it was quite mixed, the reaction. But the one thing that they did have was they had a kind of like a dry run with Euro 88. But I mean, the bigger story, I suppose, the bigger question almost around the GAA and Italia 90 is this is the first time really that you have the GAA facing a major football tournament. This is a sport that, yes, it's popular in Ireland, but the GAA obviously is the institutional sport of the country. It's the big one.
But it's been reacting to soccer, as they call it, since the 66 World Cup.
Absolutely.
And it's led to an evolution of Gaelic games as a consequence.
Oh, well, I mean, yes. Certainly in terms of playing, coaching, how they see the game, the GAA itself, what was the one major catalyst for the removal of the ban on people playing rugby, soccer and hockey? Well, it was the 1966 World Cup being beamed into your living room. I mean, how can you stop GAA members watching a sport that's right there in front of them all the time? And very quickly, the ridiculousness of the ban itself kind of was made clear by that. And it is mentioned, as you say, like in the likes of the McNamee report, the GAA's, one of the GAA's major strategic plans and reviews back in 1971. The 1966 World Cup is mentioned, the 1970 World Cup is mentioned as something that these are very significant and the GAA needs to, take something from them. And you would have had officials around that time, particularly in the 66 World Cup, because it was so close to home in England and England won it and all the rest of it. You had GAA officials who were genuine. I mean, Jimmy Smith was a great Clare hurler and later a major GAA administrator official in this period. He thought that the GAA was in dire trouble after the 1966 World Cup. He wasn't sure whether the GAA would actually withstand, a surge of popularity and interest in soccer in the country, that soccer would actually overtake it and overwhelm it, which obviously didn't happen. But the same, was paranoia too strong, Ciaran? The same fear certainly would have been there that this kind of, quite sudden emergence of a successful Irish football team. How do we deal with this?
Yeah, so how did they initially deal with it? How did they deal with the euphoria of Euro 88? Because in many respects, like part of the challenge here is these aren't happening in Mexico or Brazil. These are happening 2 hours out on the time zone. So they're landed on television at the ideal time for viewers.
Exactly. And it's also something, though, that I think the country itself didn't know how it was going to deal with. Euro 88, for example. I mean, we're both kids of the 80s. Where were you in 1988? Were you living in London at that stage, or were you home?
I was in London, yeah.
You were in London, okay. So
it's one of my abiding memories. We lived in a corner house just off the North Circular Road in London. And when Ray Houghton scored the goal against the English, was the whole family piling out the front door and giving it to all our neighbours in the front garden.
Oh my God, you're straight out of a Roddy Doyle book.
Yeah, but I mean, actually, it was a pretty Irish estate too, so we weren't on our own. You know, we could hear down either side of that corner
Lots of
other
cheering.
Irish families celebrating too.
That's kind of magic. Well, I was, the summer of Euro 88, I was 11 years of age. I'm like your prime customer now for this. 11 years of age, first major tournament, kind of really into football, maybe 5 years at that stage, you know. So like, you know, I'm right there in the crosshairs for this. So what I recall of it, certainly in the country, was that no one really knew. We'd never been to a major tournament before. No one really knew what to expect. There was a kind of a song, Ireland, show them what we got. Oh, we can beat this. Anyway, people go YouTube, but I remember seeing it on the Late. And, you know, so this was it. And we were playing England in the first game. Looking back on it, Ciaran, you know, what you forget is it was actually such a short, it was less than a week. Euro 88 for Ireland lasted 6 days. June the 12th, they played England. And on June the 18th, they played the Netherlands, and they played the Soviet Union in the midweek. That was the day of Ronnie Whelan's famous thunder bastard goal.
Yeah, and I mean, all these guys that think like 48 team World Cups are tough. It was 8 teams in the tournament. And I mean, going out to Wim Keefe's goal was heartbreak.
Oh, it was terrible. I mean, you know, we don't obviously need to go through the detail of Euro 88, but as people will probably know, Ireland beat England day one. They draw to the Soviet Union in the midweek, and then they're knocked, as you say, they're knocked out by Wim Keefe's viciously, wickedly spinning header that bounces off the ground and just goes beyond Packy Bonner, and 1-0, and Ireland are gone in an 8-team tournament. Unbelievable. But as I said, we didn't really know how to react. But the GAA kind of were on guard. They were very much on guard. They knew that this was going to be a major, major event in the summer, right in the middle of their peak season. But initially, for example, take fixtures. Initially, they didn't change anything. They just made their fixtures. But as the time got on and got closer to Euro 88, they kind of went, particularly the provincial councils, of course, because this is provincial championship time, they went, I don't know about this. So for example, a Munster hurling semi-final, for example, between Cork and the winners of Clare and Waterford from the first round was also on June the 12th. And there was talk of playing it, maybe should we play it at 7 o'clock in the evening? But they went to the management committee in Croke Park and said, look, I know we've submitted our fixture, but can we change it? They were rebuffed the first time. They went again, and it was agreed to move it to the following weekend, June the 19th. Now, that clashed with Leinster hurling quarterfinals, which had caused ructions the previous year because there had been 2 replays in the Munster finals, football and hurling. And when those replays were set, they clashed directly with Leinster Championship games. And there was war over it in 1987. But it's telling that in this case, the Leinster Council see that there's a bigger issue at stake here. We're not going to go up against this major soccer tournament. So, yeah, look, let's just do it. The Leinster Council themselves, they had 2 Leinster football quarterfinals on June 12th. They moved them to June the 6th, which was a bank holiday Monday, to avoid the Ireland-England game. In the end of it all, in the course of Euro 88, there was actually only 2 matches that clashed with Ireland fixtures. One, not surprisingly, the Ulster Council refused to change any of their fixtures. Never! So Donegal and Armagh played in the Ulster quarter-final at the same time. Well, at the same time as the England game. How did it work out? It was a dreadful game. when the result came through, they didn't even announce it on the public address, whether Ireland had beaten England or not, even though, both games had overlapped. There was only 5,000 people in the athletics ground for the game, which was, for then, was a poor crowd, a very poor crowd. The following weekend, Offaly played Kildare in a replay of a Leinster quarter-final. So they had played on the bank holiday Monday, and I guess they had moved it once, so they were like, oh, look, we're going to play. And it was unusual that they played it on the 18th, because that's a Saturday evening, and this wasn't an era when Saturday matches were a thing. But they played it in the evening time, so it didn't clash directly with the Ireland-Netherlands game. But still, there was only 3,500 at the game. There was 6,000 at the draw. Offaly won the replay for what it was worth. Now, the overarching reaction, you might wonder, well, what were the GAA presidents saying? What was Liam Mulvihill, the Director General? Were they rowing in behind Team Ireland, or how were they doing it, John Dowling was the GAA president from Offaly. I'm going to be honest, Ciaran, he was a referee, a long-standing administrator, a man who oversaw a great revolution in Offaly GAA, as we know, between the football and the hurlers coming through and winning amazing All-Irelands. But when it came to the old soccer and the ground football, maybe not the man you necessarily wanted out front of house when Ireland were in Euro 88 and the GAA were trying to navigate a diplomatic path through.
Okay, so he's not a card-carrying member of Tullamore Town, like?
No, he likes GAA and he likes athletics. And that's about the height of it. So in a, I don't know what you call it, mischievous move by one of the newspapers, they said, let's ring some GAA figures and see what they're doing for the match. So they rang John Dowling, and John Dowling said, I'm not interested in it. No, I won't watch any of the games. I'm too busy to look at it. I don't want to criticise it, but I don't like soccer as a game. So that's okay. If you don't like it, you don't like it. Fair enough. But you are the president of the GAA. You're a figurehead for a very large association that would have traditionally been seen as, well, they were anti-soccer because of the ban and for all sorts of other different reasons. Donny Nealon, the Munster Council Secretary, was far more hip to the scene when he got the phone call. He said, it's none of your business. It's my own business whether I watch the match on TV or not.
Like asking him who is he voting for in the general election.
He saw this one coming. He saw that ball whizzing in from a mile off. He wasn't going to pull on it. Liam Mulvihill was asked on the Monday, did he watch the game? He said he didn't see it. But then you had the flip side, Mick Loftus, who had been the previous GAA president before John Dowling, he wished the Irish team well. Jack Mahon, who was a great Galway footballer of the 50s, and he was the chairman of the Galway Football Board by now. He was actually appalled at the reaction from the GAA hierarchy. He thought they should have taken a much more conciliatory and, get out in front of this and wish them well sort of approach. But, to be fair, for balance, Ciaran, Bono didn't watch the Ireland-England game either, and there was a lot of matches you'll see in the newspapers at the time. Club games shifted around to avoid these games into the evening time and so on and so forth. So
Bono was obviously at one of those,
He was, yeah.
Had a cooler game.
He had a cooler match, yeah, exactly. Dowling was also annoyed that they shifted fixtures, that these decisions were made. He felt that they were made and they should have stuck with them. But just to give you an idea how sensitive things were in 88. So Conor Cruz O'Brien, politician, diplomat, columnist, and so on, he wrote a piece for the Times of London asking why are the Irish fans so well behaved in Germany compared to the hooliganism problem that England were experiencing the whole time that time. And he said in the piece, soccer in Ireland is not a nationalist game. IRA sympathisers, he said, supported Gaelic Games. The bloody-minded and foreign haters among the Irish are not among the soccer fans. So this, you can imagine how the GAA reacted.
Yeah, I don't imagine Conor Cruz was in amongst the fans too often to be able to make a clear definition here either.
I think you're right there. And the GAA went absolutely ballistic. Cruiser did roll back a little bit after the reaction. But it just shows you that the GAA are they feel like, they almost feel like they're cornered in one sense, that they're being almost obliged and forced to kind of celebrate this achievement by the Irish football team, while at the same time, I think some of the officials and that are still in a kind of post-ban sort of place where they're trying to navigate a certain amount of politics. And of course, the troubles in the north are raging. So, you've got very much a polarized sense of sport there. So there's a lot of things at play here.
Love GAA history? Then you love going deeper with Over the Bar's Cordia Club membership. For just €5 a month, you'll get exclusive member-only episodes and series, early ad-free access to the main podcast, plus detailed show notes, a newsletter, and the chance to have your questions answered. Join Michael Foley and Ciaran O'Hara as they uncover the stories, the legends, and the questions that shaped our games. Don't just listen, be part of the club. Join now at overthebar.club.
Euro 88 is a week. But Italia 90, that's going to be a big old festival of football.
It is. And by the time we get to Italia 90, by 1990, like, everybody is aware how big this thing was. I mean, I think it was Michael Delaney, the Leinster Council Secretary, made the remark after Euro 88 when they had, the homecoming. And like, that homecoming is famous for being so chaotic. Like the Irish team bus, like Jack Charlton was terrified that a child would get rolled or would get caught under a bus as they were rolling through Dublin city centre. The crowd was so enormous. Michael Delaney made the remark, there's more people turned up to see a bus than went into Croke Park to watch matches, So they were fully aware of what was coming. The advertisers, businesses, the money makers were very much aware now of what Ireland at a World Cup could do. So it's a very, very different. Like, for example, here's a good sample. So the Gay Byrne radio show on Radio 1 was the biggest radio show in the country every day at the time. And one morning, of the 22 commercials broadcast during one show, 17 of those commercials related to Ireland and the World Cup. So that's just a very...
Yeah, and we've talked about this in our episode about sponsorship in the GAA, how Italia 90 is a catalyst for the commercialisation of the GAA.
Big time, because they see what's going on around them now. And, to be fair, there was a little bit in 88 as well. There was one very crucial thing that they did, which is very relevant to 1990. So early in 1988, Dowling did convene a meeting to talk about how can we market the GAA better during this coming summer of 1988 now. And one of the ideas they came up with was that, we need to start staging summer camps. So there would have been summer camps in different clubs around the place at the time, but we need to get a bit more organised about this. So every county was given £500 to promote and stage club summer camps during the summer of 88. And that is effectively the beginning of the cool camps that we have now. So Euro 88 would have triggered that. So that is kind of ongoing during 1990 now as well. But GAA clubs are actually leaning into the Italia 90 thing a bit. Mona Lean GAA club, for example, in Limerick, get these figures now. For a 37-inch colour television, Ciaran, they spent $3,500. $3,500.
£100 per inch.
Pretty much for the clubhouse, because they knew, we're going to get loads of people in. This is going to pay for itself. Glen Rovers in Cork City, like, there was one match, the place was packed for it, and there was an old man at the back of the bar, and he said, "It's only a ball game, but it's done more for us than any political manifesto or any party I can think of." Which, there's always this huge thing about what did the World Cup of 1990 do for the country and so on and so forth. I don't know. I mean, I'm always a little bit sceptical about, did it trigger the Celtic Tiger type of talk? I mean, I moved to Dublin in 1995, and I always say Dublin was boarded up when I moved there, and I moved out of there again in 2011, and it was boarded up then when I moved as well with the recession. So there was some years to go before the money came in, but maybe in a sense it gave the country a sense of its own identity. And the GAA is trying to operate within this. Again, of course, the phone call is made to John Dowling. Are you going to be watching the games? Particularly the England game, of course. Ireland are drawing against England again in 1990. And he says, "I won't be watching the Ireland-England match. I'll be too busy that night." So he's not really learned the PR lesson of 1988.
He's out reffing, it's grand.
I'll tell you where he was in a minute now. But Danny Lynch is the GAA PRO at the time. Danny, when you think about it, he was a very strong character, and and possibly the right guy in this scenario, because he bites back hard against this. He said, yes, Dowling was asked, was he going? He has a busy schedule. He may not be available to watch the game. He said the report where the quote appeared hadn't mentioned that Dowling had congratulated the FAI when Ireland qualified, and that John Dowling and Liam Mulvihill had issued statements before the team left for Italy wishing them well. As a matter of fact, Danny goes on RTE then to wish them luck before the England game. You can see it on a documentary that was made some years ago. It just shows a little bit of the preamble before the Ireland-England game in 1990. And there's Danny in Croke Park going, we wish the Irish team well and hope they go well. On the day of Ireland-England, Dowling and Mulvihill were actually in Tipperary with Micheál Mara-Hertig, visiting schools ahead of Féile na Gael that was going to be on that summer in Tip. And he did actually watch the game that night. So he did watch the game. In terms of, again, I suppose the most interesting thing is always the games, like what clashed here. There was a couple of significant clashes. Again, the Ulster Council say never. And Donegal, I mean, it's kind of ironic that Donegal are the ones that get caught in this twice, being such a fantastic place for soccer, where soccer lives cheek
and
by
where
jowl.
Packy Bonner's on the team.
Packy Bonner's on the team, and there's loads of connections between the Gaelic football team and soccer, and it's just a shame. But they get caught again. So Donegal and Derry are in the Ulster semi-final. You have a Leinster hurling semi-final double bill between the Dubs and Wexford and Offaly Kilkenny on the same day.
And this one's famous because this is the day that DJ Carey and Brian Wheelahan make their debuts, marking each other.
Exactly. And I think it's still the heaviest win Offaly have ever had over Kilkenny. So it's a significant day. In terms of the numbers, like the Leinster games only got 17,000. 25,000 had been expected. And that was kind of, keeping in mind that it was going to be clashing with a fixture. Ireland were actually playing Egypt. Now, as everybody knows now, you'd have been better off going to a GA match that day than watching Ireland-Egypt. Just watch the highlights. You
would probably have been better off watching the paint dry.
You would. So 17,000, expected 25,000. The previous year's doubleheader had got 33,500. So it was half of what they got in 1989. In Ulster, I mean, they just didn't learn their lesson. 5,000 people turned up to Donegal and Derry. I mean, just really, really poor. So that was really the day. The Egypt game was the only day. All the other matches were fine. There was no clashes. But the reaction to even that was pretty caustic in places. I mean, it was pointed out that, the Pope had even changed the Corpus Christi ceremonies that week to allow Italians to watch their team. So how could the GA not shift a match so everybody could watch Ireland-Egypt? Declan O'Byrne, the TV reviewer in the Sunday Independent, Ciaran, was quite cross at the GA. He says, senseless begrudgery and an insult to lovers of both sporting codes and the dedicated players of the four counties involved in Sunday's programme. He's referring to the Leinster hurling semi-finals there. So it didn't go down well. It was not good. And again, the GA as a whole had tried to, they were kind of opening themselves up to the idea of soccer. Like Noel Drumgoole from Limerick at GA Congress that April had asked Congress to allow a one-off soccer game at the Gaelic grounds between Ireland and the Soviet Union to help them ease the debt that had gone into revamping the Gaelic grounds. 300 plus people there, Ciaran. 10 hands went up in favour.
Okay.
So that wasn't going to happen really, was it? Friend of the podcast, Ciaran, that I'm going to reintroduce, the late, great Eugene McGee. A man I think it's safe to say...
Look it
now. It's safe to say that we would both feel that Eugene is a fairly accurate weather vane of where things are going to go.
The most accurate weather vane at that time.
I think it's fair to say. On the big picture stuff particularly. Not necessarily predictions. None of us are great on those when it comes to being a weather vane. We're spinning around in the wind. But when it comes to figuring out what all this means for the GA and where it's going next, Eugene is always worth having a look at. And he wrote a piece in the middle of Italia 90 that I think just nailed it. The headline was GAA under pressure. And he described Italia 90, first of all, as a revolutionary transformation in the entire sporting perception of great masses of Irish people. And I think that's a very simple way of encapsulating what it was. For a lot of people, soccer just did not exist before Italia 90. But now it's something to watch, it's something to play, it's something to get behind. There's a magnificent sort of naivety, innocence, curiosity, and excitement about Italia 90 that will never ever be repeated. I see it now. We all see it now. You know, when Ireland get to like a World Cup playoff, like they did against Czechia and so on, there's this attempt to try and recreate a sense of Italia 90. It is utterly unique for all of those reasons. We will never have it again. But Eugene sees where this is going, and he references how GAA officials privately are reacting. He describes it, their reaction to how popular soccer is, the public reaction, as total shock, ranging from total shock to blissful ignorance. He points out how the parish, you know, that's where the GAA club was. The GAA club, there was a GAA club in every parish. That was always a great dream of the GAA. He points out the growth of soccer clubs in these places now. For example, he takes the FAI Irish Schools Association. So in 1978, that started out with 6 teams. By 1990, there's 400 teams involved, including 150 national schools. So that gives you the idea of how soccer was putting its roots down through the 80s into 1990. In fact, the under-14 FAI Cup final in 1990 included a team from Kerry, which, you know, that strikes a blow to the heart of what you would consider GAA land to be. He's very critical of poorly run clubs and counties just letting things pass them by, not pushing and promoting GAA properly at local level. He also pushes for championship reform. He says we need more major games in the peak season, not this big long thing that we have. He suggested the GAA look at the National Football League, the NFL in America, look at the AFL. He said, look at the World Cup itself for new formats. Now, this is Eugene McGee that in 9 years' time will be part of a football review committee that will propose a revamped football championship that will be just so revolutionary to people they can't accept it. But it's kind of like John the Baptist paving the way for something bigger. It paves the way for the qualifier system, the idea of having a second game. But he's projecting this idea now. He also talks about the need for a change around the GAA amateur status rule. At that time in 1990, a GAA player couldn't take part in major commercial promotions. Okay, you had little bits and pieces, fellas advertising Fluke, sheep dip, and yeah, all this stuff. But I mean, if you open the newspapers, turned on the radio or the television, you know, opened your cornflakes packet and pulled out the Italian 90 cards that were inside, all you were seeing was Irish players. And he was like, the GAA has to open itself up to this. And like, the GAA did have an enormous marketing push that summer. They spent £100,000 on television ads alone that particular summer. That was like, I mean, I don't know how much that is in modern money, but it was totally and utterly unthinkable that the GAA would even contemplate.
That was far more than they were making in TV rights revenue against it.
Probably was. Totally unthinkable that they would spend that much pre-Euro 88. Totally and utterly unthinkable. Like the Leinster Council paused their fixture making to see what day Ireland might be playing a second round game before they settled on the weekend's fixtures, because there was a chance that Ireland could have been playing on a weekend day. Now, it turned out that they played Romania in the midweek, so it didn't really matter. Overall, it's a kind of a time of great change. There's a lot of stuff coming at the GAA at the one time. They're trying to adjust. Now, it wasn't all bad. Like, I mean, for example, the Leinster Senior Football Championship, the overall figures in 1990, they only dropped by 4,700. So it kind of held its own. What you found always was, in the aftermath of a World Cup or a European Championships where Ireland were involved, there's always a big jump in GAA attendances because people are in the kind of the groove of sport and they want to go out and see more sport. So you do see an increase in GAA attendances post-tournament. And I think over the years, they kind of adjust to accepting that the World Cup is just something that's just so huge, and particularly if Ireland are involved, you just have to grin and bear it. That was certainly, Peter Quinn was the next president up by the time Ireland got to the next World Cup in 94. And that was his attitude. We got to grin and bear this. You know, the attendances will be fine. Like in 1994, Kildare and Dublin drew 23,000 on the same day as Ireland versus Italy. It didn't clash. One was an evening game. Obviously, Dublin Kildare was an afternoon game. There had been nearly 60,000 at that game in 1993. Now, Croke Park was being reconstructed at the time, but say take Cork Kerry down below. Now, Cork had an unbelievably commanding win over Kerry in 1993, even though it was only 3 points. They had won it very well, and Kerry was in a very depressed state. But there was nearly 43,000 at the 1993 game. Only 24,000 turned up to Cork Kerry in 94. So there's a general sort of decline. And this is what happens during the World Cup. There is a general decline in attendances, but not a bottoming out. I mean, unless you're like the Ulster Council and you just go completely head to head with something, and then you can expect for it to bottom out.
So that's 94. As I say, it's in a different time zone. It's probably less of a hindrance. How is 2002 when games are played in the morning?
Yeah. So again, you don't have any direct clashes in 2002 because of that. There are like Ireland Cameroon, for example. I remember it was on at like 8 o'clock in the morning or something like that. That did clash with a couple of fixtures in the Comórtas Pelin na Gaeltacht, I can tell you. Did it really? Oh my goodness! Good Lord!
Because I was down in Connemara.
The one game that did clash big time was Ireland versus Spain, the second round game. That was on a Sunday, and that clashed with a few things. It clashed, for example, with the Kerry Cork Munster semi-final. It clashed with the Tip Clare Munster semi-final. You're not going to believe this. It clashed with the Ulster football semi-final involving Derry and who?
Would it be Donegal by any chance?
It would have to be the three-peat. Donegal, never! 7,394 people turned up to Donegal and Derry. There was barely 5,000 people in the ground at the throw-in, but there was a huge exodus from the pubs in Clones at half-time, or just before half-time, with a load of people come in because the penalty shootout between Ireland and Spain just ended. So a few more thousand kind of came up the hill and into Clones.
Love GAA history? Then you love going deeper with Over the Bar's Cordia Club membership. For just €5 a month, you'll get exclusive member-only episodes and series, early ad-free access to the main podcast, plus detailed show notes, a newsletter, and the chance to have your questions answered. Join Michael Foley and Ciaran O'Hara as they uncover the stories, the legends, and the questions that shaped our games. Don't just listen, be part of the club. Join now at overthebar.club.
I was at Kerry Cork that day. I remember watching the 2002 game, the Ireland-Spain game, in a pub. It was jammed. It poured rain that day. It was horrible. And an awful lot of people stayed in the pub after the Ireland-Spain game was finished. But there was still 30,000 people up in Killarney that evening. I was actually surprised. Tip Clare, like 1,338 people turned up. So, it's not great. I mean, actually, that day of Donegal and Derry, just to give you an idea, most of us by 2002, I think, in terms of the GAA, the debate around opening up Croke Park had even changed the language. So they weren't talking about alien games and foreign sports or any of that kind of thing. They were now being referred to as competing sports.
Yeah.
Right? So it was different. But if you were in the press box the day Donegal played Derry, there was a man a journalist brought in a portable television with him and plugged it in, fixed the rabbit ears so he could pick up Ireland-Spain, so he could be watching it before the GAA match started. He got absolutely chewed out of it by an Ulster Council official for daring to watch soccer inside in Clones. So you still had that undercurrent, I suppose you could call it, and a kind of a resistance to the idea that we have to go with this. Okay, they did free up major money again to try and promote the games through 2002. And to be fair, 2002 was a very successful year for the GAA. If you think of, like, the Dubs were back in big time, and the new Croke Park was opened, and you had those massive gala matches towards the end of the year, where it was the first time we saw Croke Park full. I'm thinking of Dublin Armagh, the All Ireland football semi-final in particular, was incredible day.
And at this stage we have the GPA. We have a different approach to sponsorship, some of which is based upon other developments in soccer which have been prompted by Italia 90. So the Champions League with the multi-sponsor model, all that type of thing. But it all kind of flows on to, and we've seen a bit of it again. You referenced, the attitude to the Czechia game.
Mm-hmm.
But I was working in 6 Mile Bridge the day of the Hungary and Ireland game, doing a club hurling game at the time, and we had a monitor in the truck. We weren't watching the game overly, but I saw Troy Parrott score the goal, and I knew that around the ground there were people watching that game on their phones, so I was able to cut to a group of kids behind the goal celebrating whatever number of seconds later that they saw it. And that was kind of picked out as a positive moment.
Absolutely. And rightly so.
An ecumenical moment between the two sports.
Absolutely. I'd credit to you for having the ingenuity and the experience to pick that up, because I saw that afterwards, and it was a fantastic piece of television. You saw in real time what it meant to people to see Troy Parrott score the goal and the kids getting excited, and it was like a ripple around the ground. It was magical. And I think that kind of ecumenical feel is kind of how the GA react now. They go with the flow when these major events happen.
Well, we host them now in GA venues. Like, so much has changed. When you see the Irish women's team want all their major qualifiers played in Páirc Uí Chaoimh.
Yes.
And you've had the men's team playing regularly in Croke Park. You've had now League of Ireland games occurring, most recently, Galway United hosting Derry hosting teams. We're in a completely different world now.
We're moving towards a more, I suppose, what you'd call a municipal plan for stadia, certainly, where you'll get just multi-purpose grounds. That might be a bit far down the line, but that's definitely where we're going. I think the very interesting thing is when you think about Italia 90 and major tournaments through a GAA prism, the GAA almost got as much out of it as soccer in Ireland did, because, for example, say take the 1990 World Cup, right? Yes, there was a surge in participation, but it didn't actually, from an FAI perspective, it didn't actually result in a massive financial investment in the grassroots as such. Like, the GAA had the facilities and the infrastructure. So what happens is when you have a surge in participation like that rising tide lifts all boats. So as much as kids were going out playing soccer, their parents were always also looking at going, well, they could play GAA, they could play rugby. And the GAA had the facilities and the infrastructure from the beginning to accommodate those large numbers. So they got a lot from that. I think Italia 90 in particular, and we've referenced it already, it forced the GAA to take the promotion of their games a lot more seriously. It brought all of the, I suppose, the flaws that were there, that were kind of being papered over for years, much more into focus. For example, player welfare, the quality of the stadia, the competition structures, the knockout system that hadn't been working for quite a while. The commercial aspect, where did the GAA need to go to keep pace, to keep pace with commercialism so as to protect their amateur status as best as they could. Like, before Euro 88 and Italia 90, soccer was just seen as heresy, was seen as sporting heresy. But as I said, by the time the Rule 42 debate is on, we're talking about competing sports. We're talking about, and competing sports that we can work with, that we're getting as much out of their success, as they are almost, And you see it again then, the clashes in fixtures. Like, the GAA do move around major sporting events into the 21st century for a while. So, for example, you remember the Ireland-England Grand Slam game in 2003 in Lansdowne Road. It was kind of the first time the Irish rugby team really, got their teeth into something after decades of nothing. So that was on a Sunday, and the GAA shifted all of their league matches to the Saturday to avoid a clash, which was smart. That was smart at the time. But then there was other occasions when you kind of went, well, is it really making much of a pile of a difference if they do shift their games? So, for example, there was a Heineken Cup semi-final in 2006, a famous one between Leinster and Munster. Now, that was going to clash directly. Well, that wasn't going to clash. They were going to play anyway. But the National Football League final between Kerry and Galway was scheduled for the same time in potentially Croke Park. Now, it was on in Limerick in the end of it all, but they moved it to the evening. 7,500 people turned up at it. Pretty rubbish crowd really for a Football League final in Limerick. But the hurling semi-finals, the league semi-finals, did go head-to-head with that Munster-Leinster game. Now, it was a double-header, but it got 8,500. So, like, you know, there wasn't a whole pile of difference between what the GAA got in for the hurling semi-finals and what they ended up getting in for a league final. In 2008, they shifted a league final involving Cork and Galway, a hurling league final, to avoid a Heineken Cup final involving Munster. Terrible crowd turned up. We've had Super 8s games clashing with the World Cup final in 2018. Kerry Galway and Kildare Monaghan clashed with that. It drew 30,000 people to Croke Park. Like, it kind of just... I suppose they learned was you just got to push on. So John Dowling, to a point, was right, but not for the right reasons. He wanted them to push on with their fixtures because we are not going to be influenced by what soccer is doing. But I think what the GAA have learned is that whatever soccer is doing, it's not going to impact the GAA positively by shifting their games around. The hardcore support will turn up. You may lose a certain proportion of your audience, but you're going to lose that proportion anyway because they're just dialed into this major tournament. The likes of a World Cup or a European Championship, even if Ireland are not involved, they just blow everything else out of the water. And we can see that already in TV ratings this summer alone. Like, as we record this now, the biggest audience that RT have attracted for a GAA match on television this summer so far is the Munster Championship group game between Cork and Limerick. And across their platforms, that attracted 600,000 people. England's first game of the World Cup against Croatia, across all their platforms, RT Player and the TV and RT2, attracted 1 million people. So, like, that's just the World Cup. And I think the GAA have learned over the years to take the rough with the smooth. We'll learn what we can from this. If Ireland are in it, there is going to be a rising tide. And it's our job to make sure that we keep our games out front, but we are going to benefit just as much as anybody else from Ireland or anybody else going well in a major sports tournament. And that's where they need to get it right. That's where they need to embrace. And that's exactly why, Ciaran, we're trying to do as many podcasts as we can connected to the World Cup.
And if you're a Cardiff Club member, we have another to come this week where kind of made a fool of myself just a week on, because our question for last week's episode was, who was the first player to win an All-Ireland football title and an FA Cup?
Kevin Moran. No.
No, there was one before. So if you're a Cardiff Club member, we've delved back into history and we've disproved our own research, so do join us for that. And don't forget that later in the week we'll have another bite size for you ahead of a busy weekend of All-Ireland football quarterfinals. So wherever you're listening right now, make sure you like, rate, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, because it really helps us get the message out there. So thanks for listening and we'll chat to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Love GAA history? Then you love going deeper with Over the Bar's Cordia Club membership. For just €5 a month, you'll get exclusive member-only episodes and series, early ad-free access to the main podcast, plus detailed show notes, a newsletter, and the chance to have your questions answered. Join Michael Foley and Ciaran O'Hara as they uncover the stories, the legends, and the questions that shaped our games. Don't just listen, be part of the club. Join now at overthebar.club.